أهلا بيكم. النهاردة هنغوص أكتر في حتة معينة من النص الملصق اللي معانا، وتحديدا الفصل السادس. الفصل ده بيدخلنا جوه دماغ الراوي وهو بيتعامل مع إحساس بالذنب معقد قوي.
أيوة، خصوصا بعد ما تم تبرئته من سرقة هو فعلا عملها.
والغريب بقى إن مش الخوف من العقاب هو اللي كان شاغل باله أساسا.
دي نقطة مهمة جدا فعلا. القلق الأساسي أو المحور هنا ما كانش العواقب القانونية، لا، ده كان كله متعلق بشخص واحد، شخص عزيز عليه جدا، اللي هو جو.
الخوف من فقدان ثقته يعني؟
بالظبط، الخوف المرعب إنه يخسر ثقة جو، إن الصورة اللي جو واخدها عنه تتكسر. النص بيورينا الصراع الداخلي ده كويس قوي، وإزاي إحساسه بالجبن كان منعه تماما إنه يعترف بالحقيقة.
طيب هل الخوف ده كان له أساس؟ هل جو ده كان شخص صعب مثلا، ولا ده كله كان في خيال الراوي؟
هو النص بيركز أكتر على اللي جوه الراوي نفسه، على تصوراته هو كان بيتخيل أسوأ سيناريو ممكن.
اللي هو إيه؟
إن جو مش بس هيزعل أو يغضب، لا، إن نظرته كلها هتتغير، هيشوفه كشخص قليل أو سيء. فكرة إن جو يفضل فاكر السرقة دي، وإن أي تعامل بينهم بعد كده يبقى فيه شك، الفكرة دي في حد ذاتها كانت بترعبه.
مفهوم. الخوف كله نابع من أهمية جو بالنسبة له، وقد إيه هو مقدر رأيه فيه.
تماما.
وفي تفصيلة كمان لفتت نظري، حتة إنه حس إنه اكتشف الجبن ده بنفسه، كأنه وصل للموضوع ده لوحده.
أيوة، كأنه هو اللي عرف الشعور ده بنفسه، مش إنه شافه عند حد أو قلده. ده بيزود طبقة تانية خالص لفهمنا قد إيه الصراع ده كان عميق جواه في اللحظة دي.
كأنه بيعمل تشريح لمشاعره.
بالظبط، مش مجرد إحساس بالذنب كده وخلاص، لأ، هو محدد بالظبط مصدر الرعب الأساسي، فكرة إنه يخذل جو. وده بيورينا قد إيه العلاقة دي كانت محورية في عالمه الداخلي وقتها.
ووسط كل الدراما النفسية دي بقى، المشهد بياخد تحول غريب قوي. بيظهر ضيوف في البيت وبيبدأوا يتناقشوا في موضوع السرقة.
أيوة، وهنا بتيجي حتة كوميدية شوية، أو فيها مفارقة. الضيوف دول السيد بامبل شوك والسيد وابسل بيبدأوا يتكلموا ويحطوا نظريات عن إزاي الحرامي ده قدر يدخل البيت ويسرق الأكل، تحديدا الفطيرة.
ده تناقض غريب جدا، هو في وادي وهم في وادي تاني خالص.
تمام، وهنا السرد بيستخدم المفارقة دي بذكاء. في الوقت اللي الراوي حرفيا بيغلي من جوه من تقل السر والخوف، الناس اللي حواليه بتتكلم في تفاصيل بصراحة سطحية وشبه عبثية. واحد يقولك اللص نزل من المدخنة بحبل معمولة من الملايات، والتاني بيعترض بس محدش سمعه أصلا.
المفارقة دي بتعمل أكتر من حاجة، مش بس بتدي حتة كوميدية تخفف التوتر شوية، لا، الأهم إنها بتوضح قد إيه الراوي ده كان معزول تماما في اللحظة دي.
صح،
هو الوحيد اللي في الأوضة اللي فاهم الحقيقة كلها وعايش الصراع ده بجد، والباقيين بيتكلموا في خيالات.
فعلا، ده بيعمق إحساسنا أكتر بتقل السر اللي هو شايله لوحده، ده
كأنه لوحده وسط الناس كلها.
أيوة بالظبط. المشهد ده بيجسد غربته الداخلية دي. هو حواليه ناس لكنه وحيد تماما في حربه مع ضميره ومع خوفه. فاللي شفناه في الجزء ده هو تصوير دقيق قوي لتقل إحساس الذنب، خصوصا في سن صغيرة، والخوف الرهيب ده من فقدان ثقة شخص بنعتبره مهم قوي في حياتنا.
وأعتقد أهم نقطة ممكن ناخدها من هنا هي إن الخوف من تدمير علاقة مهمة ممكن يشلنا أكتر بكتير من الخوف من أي عقاب تاني، لدرجة إنه ممكن يخلي الواحد يتجنب الصراحة والحقيقة، حتى لو ده بياكل فيه من جوه.
حقيقي، الصراع الداخلي للراوي وإحساسه إنه خذل جو حتى لو جو نفسه ما يعرفش، ده بيفضل معاه.
والنقطة بتاعت إنه اكتشف جبنه بنفسه دي برضه بتفضل تعلق في الذهن، كأن ده جزء منه هو.
ودي بقى بتخلينا نسأل سؤال أعمق شوية للتفكير. يا ترى التجربة دي بالذات، تجربة إن الواحد يشيل سر زي ده ويعيش في رعب مستمر إنه يتكشف قدام شخص بيثق فيه قوي زي جو، إزاي ممكن تشكل بقية حياة الراوي؟ إيه الأثر الطويل المدى للإحساس بالذنب والخداع ده اللي بدأ معاه وهو لسه صغير؟ إزاي ده ممكن يأثر على علاقاته وقراراته بعد كده؟
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into some really interesting territory with Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. We've got these excerpts that zoom in on a key moment for young Pip, after he's taken the food and the file for the convict.
Right, and the immediate aftermath of that, the internal stuff.
Exactly, and our mission really is to get under the skin of that.
Yeah.
To understand the guilt and that fear we all have sometimes of how people see us.
Yeah.
especially people we care about.
And how we try to protect ourselves, maybe even from our own conscience.
Yeah, that instinct for self-preservation.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling, right? That little voice. Maybe after you've done something you shouldn't have. I think most people can connect with that, even if they haven't read the book.
Oh, definitely. What's so powerful right from the start is how Dickens just nails Pip's internal struggle. He's just a kid. But the weight of it all, the fear of being judged,
Yeah.
it's palpable.
Yeah, it really is. These passages really focus on that inner turmoil straight after the act itself. And it's interesting, isn't it, how his guilt seems quite selective. He doesn't seem all that fussed about Mrs. Joe.
No, not at all. The text even says something like, I do not recall that I felt any tenderness of conscience in reference to Mrs. Joe.
Right. It's all about Joe. Joe's opinion is the one that terrifies him. Yeah. Why do you think Dickens draws that line so sharply?
Well, I think that's a really key point. It shows how our sense of right and wrong, especially when we're young, is often tied up with our emotional connections.
Okay.
Pip and Joe have this genuine bond, this affection. Maybe Joe represents safety for him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the fear of disappointing Joe isn't just about the wrongdoing itself. It's about potentially losing that connection, that security.
Okay, so let's unpack that. He knows, probably deep down, he should just tell Joe, fess up.
Right.
But something stops him. And it's this really intense fear of how Joe will look at him, how he'll be perceived.
Exactly. And it's not vague, is it? It's incredibly specific, almost mundane things he worries about. Like he pictures Joe looking at his own whisker, and Pip thinks Joe's silently blaming him.
Right. As if the whisker knows.
Or Joe noticing, a bit of leftover food and immediately thinking, Pip took it. Even flat beer becomes evidence in Pip's mind.
Wow. It really shows how guilt and anxiety can twist things, doesn't it? Making huge deals out of tiny detail.
Absolutely. His mind just runs away with it, creating this whole narrative of suspicion where there might be none.
And what's really striking is how aware Pip is of his own cowardice. He admits it.
Yeah, he says he was too scared not to steal the stuff in the first place, and now he's too scared to admit it. It's a double bind.
And then there's that line.
Yeah.
What is it? About being an untaught genius.
Ah, yes. Quite an untaught genius. I made the discovery of the line of action for myself. It's such an insightful phrase.
What does it really mean there?
I think it speaks to that almost instinctive way we sometimes find to avoid difficult truths. To protect ourselves in the moment, even if it just causes more trouble inside later on.
Right. The path of least resistance, even if it's morally shaky. So, okay, he wrestles with all this inside. Then we shift scenes and we're on the journey home.
Yeah, and Joe's carrying Pip because he's fallen asleep. It's actually a really sweet, tender image after all that internal angst.
It is. But then, boom, Mr. Wopsle arrives.
Oh, Mr. Wopsle.
Yeah.
Yes. And he brings this completely different energy, doesn't he? Almost theatrical drama.
Totally. What's the effect of throwing him in right there?
It's quite a contrast. You've got Pip lost in his heavy thoughts, and then suddenly there's Wopsle with his terrible temper.
Threatening to excommunicate everyone.
If only the church were open. And his insistence on sitting somewhere damp.
Which naturally leads to the funny evidence on his trousers later.
Precisely. It's almost slapstick.
Right.
A bit of comic relief right after Pip's intense psychological moment.
Yeah, it kind of breaks the tension for us, the readers. Maybe for Pip, too. A distraction.
Could be. So they finally get home. Pip's still half asleep, staggering. Everything's a bit hazy for him.
Sensory overload, maybe?
Yeah. And then Mrs. Joe greets him with, how does Dickens put it? A heavy thump.
And feeling like 50 boots. Not exactly a gentle welcome home.
No, and then the visitors are there, and they need an explanation for the missing pie and the file.
Yes. Enter Mr. Pumblechook.
And his magnificent theory.
It's amazing, isn't it? The forge roof, the house roof,
Yeah.
a rope made of bedding, down the chimney. He's got it all worked out.
With such absolute confidence, it's a brilliant example of how people create narratives, however wild, to explain things they don't understand.
And that little description Dickens throws in, drove his own chaise cart over everybody. Perfect Pumblechook.
Isn't it just, he just steamrolls any doubt. Even poor Mr. Wopsle tries to disagree, meekly.
But gets totally ignored.
Completely. Wopsle ends up just smoking by the fire, coatless. His objection just vanishes next to Pumblechook's certainty.
So the immediate problem gets solved with this crazy story.
Yep. Situation contained, explanation accepted, however unlikely, and Pip gets packed off to bed. A slumberous offense, they call him.
But it's clear that sending him to bed doesn't fix anything inside Pip, does it?
Not at all. This really highlights that, doesn't it? Resolving the external situation doesn't mean internal peace.
That guilt, that secret, it's still there. He carries it upstairs with him.
Exactly. Guilt isn't something that just disappears when the coast is clear. It sticks around, it shapes things later on.
Now, if you're listening, it might seem like, okay, this is Pip. This is a character in an old book.
Mm-hmm.
But think about it. Haven't you ever felt that? That knot in your stomach from guilt? That fear of letting someone down, someone whose opinion really matters to you.
Or think about how often we do that thing Pip does, the overthinking, imagining the absolute worst reactions, the worst consequences.
Yeah, getting caught in those what-if loops.
Our anxiety can really latch onto those possibilities, even if they're not very realistic.
And that untaught genius idea. Finding ways to avoid hard truths. It's kind of uncomfortable to think about, isn't it?
It is. How often do we maybe instinctively choose the easier path in the short term, even if it means not being entirely honest with ourselves or others?
So this look inside Pip's head, even though it's fiction from, ages ago.
It holds up a mirror to some really fundamental human things. Our guilt, our fear of being judged, how we deal or don't deal with the truth.
So wrapping things up a bit, what are the key takeaways here? Pip's struggle really shows the power of fear, right? How it can dictate our actions, especially when we're young.
Definitely. And the complex nature of guilt, how it's not always straightforward, how personal it is.
And the adults. Their reactions are funny, sure, but they also show how easily stories, even flimsy ones, can be accepted if they're convenient.
Yeah, that contrast between the messy, sometimes silly external world and the incredibly complex inner life Pip is experiencing.
Right. So here's a thought to maybe mull over after this. Think about a time you might have prioritized avoiding a difficult truth over confronting it. Maybe you chose the untaught genius's path, like Pip.
What were the consequences? Maybe long term, did it ripple outwards?
And does thinking about Pip's experience here maybe shed a different light on that for you? Something to consider. Thanks for diving deep with us today.